Hey everybody, before I get started, I just want to mention a couple of ways that you can engage with me on a more personal level. I have a few avenues set up and I keep focusing on one, and I figured why don't I make a short little video talking about all of them real quick before we get into these episodes. So first thing, Patreon. There's a link in the episode description, in every episode description to the Patreon, as well as a video on the feed called Major Announcement that has all the details of what each tier offers and how much they cost. I implore you to check that out. I offer a lot of cool shit for my patrons. Second thing, the Discord channel. There's also a Discord link in the episode description and in every episode description. I have multiple channels set up there for each show that I'm covering, and it's a great way to just engage with me. I have a channel set up for MMA talk as well. I'm a big MMA fan, so if you're an MMA fan, you can check that out as well. There's a link to the Discord in the episode description. And then lastly, the Facebook and Twitter. Social media. Follow me on there. I post news on there. When I say news, I mean like, hey, I'm stopping covering this show. Hey, I'm starting covering this show. Let me know what you think about this. I do live watches of things on Facebook where like I'll check in and say I'm watching so-and-so show, and then I'll like live comment while I'm watching it, and that'll be cool if maybe you watch that show too and you want to watch along with me, or you're watching it later and you will see my thoughts, which are usually pretty entertaining because I'm usually pretty high when I'm writing them. So check out all those links in each episode description, and let's talk about this episode. Peace.
One mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic. Yeah. All I need is one mic.
Hey everybody, welcome back to One Mic, and today I'm here to talk about Season 2, Episode 9 of Apple TV's Foundation, entitled Long Ago, Not Far Away. So this episode title here refers to a phrase that Demerzel uses at the beginning of her stories multiple times in this episode to help us understand both how old she is, but also her kind of like consistent proximity to the throne. It's kind of like, it was a long time ago, but things weren't terribly different from how they are now. Like, that's kind of what that feels like. And, you know, I've said this in the Discord chat, which, again, I implore you guys to join it in the little promo thing at the beginning. And in the episode description, you can find the link to the Discord. I implore you to join it. But I said this in the Discord chat. This show is firing on all cylinders, man. I don't see any way this doesn't end up in my top 5 this year. And that's despite the fact that I had issues with the first 3 episodes. Now, granted, I had one issue that persisted across the 3 episodes, but still, I had issues with the first 3. For it to be, we haven't even gotten to the finale yet, and I'm already like, yeah, this is going to be top 5. That's an incredible turnaround. You know, just like I said last week, this episode had it all. A shit ton of information. This one even had a space battle, which we didn't have last week. I don't even know if we've ever had a space battle on this show. Characters we rarely get to see together having epic conversations. And you might be wondering, like, what the fuck is he talking about? We'll get there. And we're set up for what is almost sure to be an epic finale. So, you know, I don't feel silly for, you know, not liking the silly stuff from the beginning of the season. But the turnaround from how I felt in the first 3 episodes to how I feel right now, it's not a full 180 or anything like that, because I was still feeling the show. I just didn't like an aspect of it. But it's still a pretty sharp turn. You know, I don't want to say the show turned itself around because it was never bad. But the tone of those first 3 had me concerned for the season. And then the season went on to knock the ball the fuck out of the park. So let's get into this episode, the penultimate episode of Season 2. We get the Demerzel backstory at the beginning of this episode, which I'm sure we've all been kind of waiting on once the show told us it's something that we should be interested in. I'm sure we've all been waiting for that. For a moment, I thought that was going to be the entirety of the episode, because we've seen shows do that before, where they almost kind of like, the 8th episode kind of feels like the setup for the finale, and the 9th episode is something entirely different, or, you know, not entirely different, but it might be like a, you know, like a spinoff or something like this, where it's like a whole flashback, and then you get the finale in episode 10. I thought that's what we were going to get here, like a really interesting episode about Demerzel, and then we'd get, you know, Day arriving on Terminus in the finale, you know, that kind of stuff. But it did end up being the entirety episode, and I'm going to tackle this episode chronologically, as it pertains to the runtime, since the info, like, I'm not going to start from 18,000 years ago. But since the info we got on Demerzel at the beginning is not only important, but it helps to shape the rest of the episode in certain ways, and likely some major events in the finale as well. So I'm gonna start with like what I've been calling all of this season, the Empire plotline. So 610 years ago, Cleon I, as a child, accidentally discovers the same passage that we saw Cleon the 16th and Rue discover last week. Every now and then I feel pretty sharp mentally, but this is one of my duller moments, as throughout the entire sequence I kept asking myself out loud, who is this narrating? Like, forgetting that Cleon the 16th and Rue had discovered the Cleon hologram last week. I probably should have thought, oh, it's Cleon the First that's narrating. But I was sitting there wondering, who the fuck is this narrating this? So Cleon the First finds Demerzel down there, and she's like segmented vertically like this. Like, it's so weird how they did it into like 5 or 6 pieces. Like, I don't know how someone could even come up with that visual as a way of depicting imprisoning a robot. But shout out to that guy or girl, you figured it out, and that was really creative, and it was really cool to see and watch. And that's the kind of visuals that this show has, I'm accustomed to with this show. Like, there's always something where I'm like, that looks really fucking cool, or that's really cool conceptually. This show is always kind of pushing the boundaries of that. We find out Demerzel's 18,000 years old as she tells Cleon the First stories of the history of Empire and Trantor. And time passes as she tells these stories, and we see Cleon return in all 3 forms that we know him as today: dusk, day, dawn, day, and dusk. And he appears, he leaves and returns as dawn. And he tells her of his mother, the first empress that we learned about, I think it was last week, the one that died, and she was the one that's being memorialized, all that. Apparently that mother's death happens during this time period, and we see Cleon the First now looking like Dawn coming down to tell Demerzel about his mother dying, and she tells she herself tells a story, and she starts it with the episode title, "In the Long Ago but Not Far Away." She says she was a leader of soldiers, and after a loss, she was taken captive by someone named Emperor Abu-Ranis. And she says this guy tortured her, cut her up, used her like a science experiment. She says she produced tears just like for his benefit to like simulate pain. And she says that the tears were probably equally as enjoyable to him as the knowledge that he gained from dissecting her, which is some sick shit. And then he also made the mechanism that segmented her and trapped her like that. So Cleon later returns. Now he looks like Day. He gives her clothes. Puts her back, so he frees her. He doesn't free her, but he puts her back together. But he doesn't free her because he says he needs her. And now she tells Day a story. The entire run of this show, I have messed up Dawn, Day, and Dusk. Like, I got the names, but I will call a person by the wrong name. And I've been doing it consistently. I don't know why. I can't get past it now. After nearly 2 full seasons, I still can't do this consistently. But anyway, Cleon returns looking like the person that we now know as Day. Like I said, he gives her clothes, puts her back together, but he doesn't free her. He says he needs her. So she tells him another story, starting with the episode title, about a concubine who was fucking the king all the time, but never remembered it, always telling it to Demerzel as if it was the first time it happened. And this is likely the start of the removing of the memories of people the Empire fucks, like we saw with Rue. The narration says that the stories got even sexier, but we'll get to that in a little bit. Cleon now returns looking like the character we know as Dusk, and he's now ready to free her, but kind of, sort of not. He releases her from the place in which she is imprisoned, and he intends for her to serve Empire in the way that she still does in present day. And you remember how Demerzel said last week, I keep saying last week, we'll say last episode, that she used to be governed by 3 laws that revolved around the protecting and non-harming of humans? Well, Dusk Cleon puts like a chip or something in her neck that will allow her to harm other humans, just not him. And he says it also stops her from transmitting herself out of that body, which I thought I felt like that was a bigger deal than the episode treated it as. I'm like, what did you say? She can do that? I didn't know she had that ability, but I'd be shocked if in the finale that chip in her neck I'd be shocked if it's not removed and that she then either harms one of the 3 Empire people or transmits herself out of her body, or both. Maybe I just had a thought. She says she's been alive for 18,000 years, and possibly she used to have the ability to transmit herself out of that body. What if she's like somebody important that we know from a different time? Like, what if she's the mule, and like, and she takes that chip out and can transmit her body into the mule And I don't know. I'm doing a lot right now. But I don't know. The thought just occurred to me. I felt like they downplayed this thing about transmitting herself out of her body. And maybe I'm overreacting and it's something a lot simpler than what I think it is. But I don't know. Whatever it is, this chip stops her from doing that as well. And he also mentions to her about the erasing of memories. We learned that it is in fact Demerzel who is responsible for future Cleons having fewer memories than the first one, which we learned about that earlier in the season, and that he has made it so that the very nature of Demerzel and the plan to transition to the genetic dynasty, all of these secrets that he lays out to Demerzel right now, they'll be unknown by all future Cleons, and that accounts, I'm assuming, for the difference in the memory count that we learned about a couple episodes ago. The entire flashback sequence ends with Cleon speaking of future Cleons as their kids, and Demerzel commits to protecting the Imperium. And I wanted to kind of just review what happened in the flashback before talking about it. And on one hand, after talking about it, there's a part of me that is turned off by 2 consecutive weeks of here's a character just explaining what happened in the past. But on the other hand, I do love an exciting and interesting information dump. And incorporating this one into a flashback helped it not be so kind of like, oh, it's not just a character talking. It's like we get to see it. And it was a compelling TV to watch and not just a character monologuing. So I like that aspect. I also think keeping these things in the dark until this moment has helped build anticipation for the finale and also made the information itself more impactful. I think we've all been wondering for a long time, even before the show even asked us to wonder about it, where Demerzel came from and what she is exactly. Getting that information via feedback was very satisfying and now has my eyes firmly planted on what Demerzel is going to be up to in the finale. And I'm sure that was the goal in how they disseminated the information that we learned about Demerzel, for us to now look at her differently going into finale and be like, what the fuck is she up to? I also like Demerzel's initial disapproval of this plan. She says being loyal to his shadow is unkind and beneath him. And yeah, that kind of is. It is kind of shitty. Cleon makes the good counterpoint of, I see your disapproval, but I raise you the fact that I'm giving you the lion's share of the galaxy for all of eternity. How about can you love me in exchange? It's a fair thing. I mean, none of us are we ask the same. We current day men ask the same of women after giving them a Happy Meal. So you love me now. I gave you a meal. So it's fair to ask for love after most of the galaxy for eternity. So we move back to present day to see the Cleon hologram has been giving all of this information to Cleon the 16th, our Dusk, and Rue. And one of my favorite moments of this episode is how Dusk says, "Well, all this is going to shit when Day marries Sereth and ends the genetic dynasty." And Ghost Cleon is like, "You thought?" and then locks them in there. I don't know why, but that was really surprising to me, and I feel like I should have seen that coming. But I don't know. I guess Cleon the First betraying Cleon the 16th. I don't know. Yeah, I guess I wouldn't have seen that coming. But he really was like, "Oh, you think this is it, huh?" But that was funny in the moment. But the seriousness of this has been properly conveyed by relaying it to us how long Demerzel was down there, because thousands of years. And how rarely that passageway has been found. Because to our knowledge, twice. when Cleon the First found it, and then when Cleon the 16th found it. So, twice post Cleon the First. Maybe it was, obviously it's probably existed before then. But no one but Demerzel, as far as we know, even knows that this place exists, let alone that they are in there. But methinks the business that Demerzel had that prompted her to leave at the end of the episode, to leave Terminus, probably has to do with this. Now that we're back in present day, I'm going to stay with the Empire storyline, and then we're going to wrap up by talking about the Shag storyline. So, Bel Rios talks with the... I don't know what I wrote here. Bel Rios talks with Hober Mallow and is rightfully confused as to why he would do the incredibly awesome shit that we saw him do in the last episode. And he delivers an unofficial declaration of love for Constant, kind of offhand, but also mentions that he might be buying into Seldon's shit. And they have a good back and forth about the following of people's ghosts. Seldon is the ghost that Hober would be following in this scenario. And Cleon, not the genetic dynasty, for Bel Rios would be the ghost that he's following. Except his ghost is flesh and blood. And Seldon isn't. At least, well, I feel like you can't even make like a statement like that. Like, Seldon's not flesh and blood. Well, shit. Who knows? Maybe he is. But before Day arrives on the ship and declares to everyone's surprise that he plans on negotiating with the people of Terminus, that's what we learned about Hober's motivations nowadays. At least what's changed in his motivations. I thought this was a weird scene, though, where Day comes in and declares that he plans on negotiating with Terminus. He said the entire reason he was going originally was to negotiate. So I don't see the point of making this grand declaration of wanting peace other than to show us everyone's disapproval of Day himself going down to Terminus. But Day does go down to Terminus, and he wants to go to talk in the church. And he doesn't say why, but we know it's because he saw a lot of heat signatures in the coming from the church before he got to Terminus. And inside the church, and in between moments of emasculating Polly, Day learns that they're making the personal auras, the thing that he has on his wrist, which are only supposed to be for Empire. And he declares the Foundation a cult and the church an armory, kills Constance's dad, then has everyone else killed except for the scientists. Now listen, this is a terrible thing to do. Don't get me wrong. But one of my issues this season has been the characterization of Day. He's been a lot more childlike and immature this season rather than the authoritative and intimidating Day of season 1. Well, this felt like season 1 Day, and if I had to sacrifice a father and a few clerics to get it, fine, I'm okay with that. Then Day leaves, and he sees the vault, and I love he looks over the vault, and Demerzel's like, we should go. Like, she already knows shit gonna pop off if he goes in there. I immediately bust out laughing. So it is interesting, though, because despite all that we've learned about Demerzel, I still don't know her true motives and goals right now. Like, I assume her goal/directive is still to protect Empire, but then why allow Day to marry Sareth if that's the goal? Why leave Day on Terminus to presumably ruin everything, since apparently you think he can't handle shit, when you could pull a new Cleon out of the broiler and just bring him right out and trot him out in front of everybody. But that's neither here nor there. Day wants to take the Invictus as well. It belongs to Empire, according to him. But I think we're meant to understand here that Day is still the same Day. He says he's different because he's ending the genetic dynasty and Harry didn't account for him. But this still feeds into his own arrogance. The reason Day is arrogant is irrelevant, like whether it's because he's like a god or it's because he thinks he's going to break the mold. Either way, he's still arrogant. And we see this when he dismisses the activation of the Invictus. And he's basically like, not a big deal. Bel Rios can earn his reputation right now. No big deal. And that arrogance, I think, is just... It's what I think when we see him at the end of the episode, where it's like, okay, now he's the Day that we know from season 1. But a space battle ensues, which I believe is a first for this show. I thought it was really cool. It was kind of more in line with like a Star Wars style of space battle rather than, say, like The Expanse, which feels like it'd be like a little bit more realistic. Like if you had ships in space with guns, it would probably look a little bit more like what The Expanse does than what Foundation did. But it was still a cool scene. I enjoyed it. And we see Bel's husband, Glaywin. He does damage the Invictus, but unfortunately one of the explosions takes out his ship and he crash lands on the surface of Terminus. Meanwhile, we reach probably my favorite part of the episode, which is, it's a conversation, you guys. I love conversations, and my favorite part of this episode is this conversation between Harry, Day, and Demerzel in the vault. And this whole show is painting Harry as a genius, as Day is something like, a childlike fool with immense power. You think Day would be easily outmatched mentally in a conversation with Harry. But in my opinion, to the contrary, I think Day makes a lot of great points in this conversation, and I enjoy listening to the bad guy do his bad guy thing, but going, I kind of agree with that. That's a really good point. Like, Harry talks about the importance of psychohistory and what he does, and Day says your ends seem to justify a lot of means. How low will you stoop? And I feel like that's a great point that ties in well with everyone else's criticism of Harry, being that he doesn't see people as people, but as points on a graph. And that your ends seem to justify a lot of means. Think about, he said something to that effect when Harry appeared in his throne room. He's like, you've hidden yourself at somebody. You've got, I can't remember the other thing. Like somebody was fake dead or some shit like that. I can't remember what it was. But he's like, you've done all of these things. That's like, and he said something. I think it was like to Polly, like, this is the guy you worship. He's kind of an asshole. Like that. That was a good point. And like I said, they ask how low he'll stoop, and we've already seen what Harry is willing to do to accomplish his goal. He mentioned, like I said, in the episode in the throne room. Harry denies having sent the assassins before Day makes probably the best point of anyone in the entire series. I never thought this excellent combination of truth and derision would come from Day, but here we are. So I'm going to read the quote directly because I don't want to fuck it up. If anyone is advancing a cause for war, it's you. Your cleric sowing dissension in the outer reach, your appearance in my throne room, your man's attack on the palace itself. Must you provoke me to arrive at the mathematical conclusions you desire? Man, that last sentence, dog, Harry should have felt about 1 inch tall because he got fucking owned right there. Like, this whole show, he's presented psychohistory as a mathematic inevitability. Like, something that, like, you know, this is just the natural course of things. It shouldn't even be a problem that I say that empires fall because this is just what happens naturally. But Day is like, you know, for an inevitable thing, you sure have to manipulate a lot of things to make it happen. And I just thought that was a cold-ass point. And I love when characters on shows and in movies make cold-ass points. And that was a great one. Day makes other great points in this argument, as does Harry. But eventually, Harry offers the Prime Radiant to, I was going to say today, but he doesn't, he kind of offers it today. But I kind of feel like so he says Demerzel can help him use it. And he addresses Demerzel directly several times during this argument, which was of note to me as well. Like, I don't think we're meant to wonder, but I am wondering if Harry knows about Demerzel's history and her objectives. But when he gives the Prime Radiant today, he's like, Demerzel can help you use it. I'm like, I don't know. It stood out to me that he directly addressed Demerzel multiple times. It just made me wonder, like, does he know already? But Day says for Harry to admit his math is flawed, and if he does that, then he'll spare Terminus. Now, I don't know many scientists. I'd imagine if a scientist makes a world-changing discovery, like an all-time, like this will change the course of history kind of discovery, that he knows with absolute certainty is fact and real and true, and someone comes along and puts a gun to their head and says, lie and say you didn't do this, they might as well just dig the grave. Like, no science would be like, yeah, I'm wrong about that. Like, no, they're be like, you're just gonna have to shoot me. It's principle. And Harry, unsurprisingly, refuses to do that. Day says to bring the Invictus down on Terminus, and he takes the Prime Radiant and he leaves. And before I talk about the final scenes, I just wanted to point out that it was hilarious to me when Day returned to the ship and he walked past Homer, and Homer's like, hey, yesterday, or something. Something like that. I don't know if y'all caught that, but I thought that was funny. He called this motherfucker yesterday. Like, that's an interesting way to call. Like, that's how you call an emperor has been. Like, oh, your name's Day. More like yesterday. I don't know, man. It's a bad dad joke, but I liked it. On the ship, Demerzel randomly says she needs to leave, like, right the fuck then. Day's like, what the fuck? And it's at this point where Demerzel seems to almost drop the charade. Like, I can't coddle you anymore and pretend like I give a fuck about you. You are a fuck up. I fucked up with you, but you're a lost cause and I got better shit to do. Like, that was the energy that Demerzel had. So whatever's taking her away is infinitely more important to her than whatever's happening on Terminus. And she says she hoped that having sex with him would have allowed her to have more influence over him and to correct his shortcomings, and that she apologizes for who he's become. And as if that wasn't insulting enough, she says that she's like, I didn't write it as a quote. He's like a sperm that mistakes its random movements for complexity. Like, you stupid motherfucker. Like, she snapped on him. Oh man, just a complete dropping of the act. I just can't fully convey how interested I am in whatever Demerzel is up to. Like, I'm trying to wrap my head around her mission to protect Empire and but also her complete willingness to let Day go fuck himself. Like, is her mission actually to protect Empire? Or does she have her own mission, like a long-term plan of, like, revenge for being held captive all that time? Like, if her mission is to protect Empire, why would saving Dusk be more important than saving Day? Assuming that's what she's doing. And assuming that Day needs saving. But lots of questions to answer about her in the finale, I think. The episode ends with the Invictus crashing into Terminus while Bell mourns his husband after very hardcorely giving the order to send the Invictus into Terminus. And we end the episode as Day watches the Invictus crash into Terminus and destroy the first Foundation, watches with glee. But before we wrap up, we have to talk about the Shag storyline, of course, real quick. This episode was mostly Empire stuff, so we're not going to spend too much time here. But I want to start by saying I was really disappointed and I'm sure any of you guys who watched my video for episode 8, you probably thought of me at some point. Like, I wonder if Mike's wish is going to come true. but it didn't. I was disappointed they didn't do my idea of playing around with whether or not Tellum was inside Gale. You know, that felt like a guaranteed win and something they could have done and had fun with for several episodes. Like, they could have played around with that in these last two. They could have played around with that in season 3. I'm surprised they didn't go for that, but this episode picks up the Shaq storyline with Gale arriving during the ceremony to transfer Tellum's consciousness into Gale's body. She used the same devices that she used to escape that underground prison that she was in. She used those same devices to save Gale. They get back to the beggar, and Salvor gives Gale the Prime Radiant, which again, at the time, I was like, oh shit, she just gave it to Tellum. And tells Gale to get to the ship. But Tellum is already on the ship, which ruined everything for me, much to my chagrin. And Salvor runs into Loran, or Loran, I don't know, whatever, who predictably, I mean, if you didn't see this coming, my God, predictably makes himself look like Hugo to make it difficult for her to fight him. Also much to my chagrin, because like I said, that was so predictable. Meanwhile, Tellum is tickling my funny bone by kicking Gale's ass in the most foundation way possible, pretending to be her dad, and then smacking her to another dimension. Like, I'm like, yo, she smacked the taste out of Gale. She smacked Gale to a whole different place. Like, but Salvor is outside playing Jason Bourne with Loran. I don't know how she got these fight skills. I don't think we've seen her fight like this. But Gale and Tellum continue to fight telepathically, with the mule showing up to freak out Tellum before she gets the upper hand. And just as it looks like Tellum might be about to finish Gale, Harry comes and saves her, leaving us all wondering who and what the fuck is going on, since Flesh Harry has been dead for like 3 episodes now. But yeah, so now we headed to the finale with Demerzel presumably going to rescue Dusk and Rue from that prison. Maybe not. She might have something else going on. Day has now destroyed the first foundation, but we also have to resolve his situation with Sereth. That could also be why Demerzel is rushing back to Trantor. I don't know where they take the Bel Rios and Hober Mallow and possibly the Spacer storyline, since it looked like the good guys have already taken the ultimate L with 1 episode left, but I'm curious to see where that goes. And then what do we do with the Shaq storyline? Like, if Tellum is truly dead, which, I mean, that was a pretty definitive death, much more definitive than Harry's, then that threat is neutralized. So, but how do we get to the scene with the future, from the future with the mule killing Salvor? How do we get there, since it seems like the primary threat has been neutralized? So lots of great stuff to look forward to in the finale. I can't wait. Let me know what you guys thought about episode 9 in the comments. I will be back on fucking time on Friday for the finale. And until then, peace.